I always forget. All right, so we're gonna try and do this thing. I have been the what we're gonna do is ostensibly something called Apocalypse World, but I'm probably going to do this thing. This is all going to be extremely inside baseball. You guys probably don't care about, but there's a version of Apocalypse World that's coming out that's sort of in the process of coming out. And if you're the Patreon person for the guy who's writing it, he's releasing little dribs and drabs of it. And I really, 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 really like it. There's some stuff in it that I really like. I like the tone of how characters sort of interact with the apocalypse and the weirdness and stuff like that I think will kind of match more what we're talking about. The downside is it's still kind of coming out. So, like I said, I'm gonna have to hack a little thing. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna talk a lot. Kate has heard me talk about games based on Apocalypse World for longer than she probably has any patience for. You you guys haven't. So I'm going to talk about a little bit, and I hope my wife doesn't leave me in the process of this relatively short
Somehow
explanation.
I doubt that that's going to happen.
All right,
I'm
yeah.
already 2 floors away from you. How much further do you want me to leave?
I don't
Hold out.
want.
I'm not going outside.
I don't want any of it. Okay, so Apocalypse World is the original granddaddy for a whole family of games that are the little PTBA powered by the Apocalypse games. They spun off a lot of games. Not as many games as probably D&D, certainly, but they have spun off a lot of games in a lot of different genres. This is sort of the granddaddy original thing. It's come out once, and then after about 8 years or something, 6 or 7 or 8 years, they came out with the second edition, which is ostensibly what we're playing. And now because his kids are growing up, and he's sort of like, I can't play Apocalypse World with my kids. At least I'm not super comfortable with it. And he's been sort of motivated to answer what some other people have done, sort of a revamp of the thing that sort of files off some of the edgy corners of the thing, sort of intentionally edgy. I was listening to an interview with him a little while back where he was talking about like he's the way to have a game that's kind of successful is to purposely and really successfully piss off a fairly large percentage of the people who ever read the game, like 5 to 10%. So he writes things in there in the first couple of pages that will anger certain people and strike a certain tone. And 30% of the people will get it. 30% of people will get it if the other people sort of help them. 30% of the people will need a lot more help, and 10% will be unbelievably pissed about the whole thing. But the 10% is also the part that he's kind of like, this doesn't work for kids. Or really a lot of other people who are just not comfortable with stuff. Anyway, so we're kind of theoretically aiming at this document that I had sent you guys earlier. That's the burned over document, which is this new version kind of Apocalypse World playbooks and stuff like that. What the hell is Apocalypse World? So like I said, Amanda and Kim have played in the Demolished Ones game with Fate, so you're kind of familiar with the idea of those sort of the weird wonky dice. This is not weird wonky dice. It's also not really like a D20. It has a very interesting dice mechanic, but it's one of the reasons I really really love the game. But it's pretty straightforward. It actually in some ways is like, oh, that's just like Traveler. It's not, but it kind of looks like it if you squint, which goes way back. It's not really D20 either. So the base
Traveler goes on the Wayback Machine.
Yeah, exactly. So the way this basically works, I'm going to explain it really, really briefly, and it's going to be like, what's the big deal? So you roll 2 6-sided dice, and you add a relatively small number to it that's always going to be based on your stat. Now you don't make skill checks. There's no leadership skill. There's no sneak skill or anything like that. There are moves, which I'll talk about in just a little bit, that you do stuff in the fiction of the game. And I'll be looking at it kind of squinting and going, hey, it looks like you're about to act under fire, like do something risky while there's some risk of something bad happening to you. It looks like you're going to go aggro on this guy. It looks like you're trying to read this person or read this situation or intimidate them, whatever. But they're not really skill-based. There's certain There's whole fiction built around each one of the things that you might do. And the dice hit the table, 2d6. So if you're remotely familiar with dice mechanics, you know that that's kind of a bell curve thing. It tends to land in the middle, and you're adding or subtracting a relatively small number from that dice, okay, from the die roll. And you're trying to hit, if you hit a 6 or lower, a plethora of interesting things happen. I don't want to say it's failure because it's really not. The dice mechanics aren't about figuring out whether you succeeded or failed. It dictates what options are now available to you. Sometimes those options are how much you're going to bleed or not bleed, but it basically sort of dictates what options are available to you. 7 to 9, if I want to give it to you in really straight RPG terms, if you can get a 10 or higher, it's great. You kind of get exactly what you want. Nothing really bad happens. Ish. From 7 to 9, it's more of a mixed success or success at cost, or you can get exactly what you want, but there's going to be some hard choices, things like that. 6 or less, things get a lot harder. Maybe you don't get what you want. I actually tend to gravitate when I have the option of giving people exactly what they want when they roll terrible numbers. But in such a way that they kind of think to themselves, why did I ever want that? I've used mechanics like this in Star Wars, and people using force powers and getting like a 3 is one of my favorite things in the whole world, because that's like the dark side takes over and I gotta stop this thing. Well, you stop it, and you also crush it, and you have a horrible flashback to the battle that happened here 900 years ago, and now you've got PTSD and flashbacks but hey, you stopped the guy and saved your friend. I don't want to anymore. So that's kind of the basis of the mechanics. It's really quite simple, and the way it's built into the Roll20 is very nice, because a lot of times there's a little picture of a dice next to the move that you're going to do, and you can just click that and it does all the math for you, which makes it even simpler. Okay. So we're going to do, and I use this for quite a few different games, and in a bunch of different genres, and stuff that different people have made. What we're doing initially is just trying to figure out what the heck we're going to actually do with this thing, because there's very, very little laid out in terms of like what the setting is going to be if you look at the basic Apocalypse World, other than on the cover of the book it says Apocalypse World, so it's going to be about playing something in an apocalypse. The entire setting assumption in the entire sort of rule book is 8 sentences that are on the Roll20 screen up here, pretty much.
Right.
That's it. And after that, everything else is kind of up to y'all. Nobody remembers how or why. Maybe nobody ever knew. So on and so forth. We'll take a look at that later. When I was emailing you guys earlier today, and I was talking about like, I kind of don't know what all we're going to do. Kind of depends on what you guys are going to pick out or anything like that. I need to ask, and please speak up, were any of those very, very sketchy, impressionistic snapshots of some of the playbooks that I mentioned something where one of you went, ooh, that sounds interesting? Because if so, it would help me to kind of know that. Otherwise, we're going to kind of, well, either way, we're probably going to kind of look and go through playbooks. And unless you guys have like, I really want to play X. I want to play Mad Max. I want to play Charlize Theron's character in Mad Max, or whatever. Doesn't care. I don't care. It's whatever. But so that's my question kind of pending here, and I'm going to flip my mic up for a second and I'm going to give you 7 seconds of uncomfortable silence while I ask my daughter to grab something for me.
Is she getting us sodas? Is she getting us more sodas?
Maybe after she finishes killing this guy in Overwatch.
Okay.
I'm
I'm
gonna
trying
go.
to find the thread. Because what did I do with it? I archived it. There it is.
What you looking for? Oh, I can
I was
hear
looking
myself.
for the thread, and I
Okay,
archived it.
and I actually, yeah, I just emailed you guys that the burned, like the first 10 playbooks in burned. Now,
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm looking at
so
that.
the way the deal is that there's a crap ton of there's like 20 different playbooks in Apocalypse World, the sort of standard Apocalypse World second edition, and I love some of them. I love them, but some of the ways that they handle things like battles and stuff is a little bit more, I think, more elegant in Burned, and I like some of the playbooks that they have in here quite a bit. And there's parallels. Um, so I'm going to kind of, unless somebody's going to speak up, I'm just going to kind of flip over, and I sent you guys out this PDF to the um, uh, whoa, that got really small, to the burn thing that I encourage you guys to take a look at here. And
Yeah, I
just,
spent the last hour reading through that as well as the other one.
yeah,
I can tell you what I'm not interested in playing because I'm playing that every week in another game.
Please.
tell me that. I like that. That's a
So that character is very much of a brute character, with somewhat of a brain, but not great. That has a lot of responsibility. Like, and she, while I don't mind and kind of relish the idea of playing a broken character, in this, um, she is very broken in a way that makes her even a little more vicious.
sure.
So, we played those characters for about a year and a half, took a 6 month hiatus, and now we're back at it. Getting back into that character was really challenging because I thought, oh, I really just now need to go to therapy.
Yeah.
so,
And
so
I
like,
used I used to joke in my master's writing program that half the people that were there were sort of secretly doing it as like a they were like they were paying for their master's program and for therapy in the way they were
yeah.
venting it. And I think there's probably a subset of gamers that do that too. No judgment. It's just, it's what they find, but it's not really my jam.
Yeah.
So
So, in this, the broken is perfectly fine. That doesn't bother me so much.
yeah, broken's a
But
little hard to avoid in the Apocalypse World stuff. You're
yeah,
always going
that's
to be a
kind of
little
the
bit,
impression I got.
yeah. You can,
But this will be broken in a whole different manner, which is perfectly fine.
uh-huh.
But she ends up being, kind of the de facto decider on a lot of things.
So
And
things like
so that it'd be nice to kind of take a break from that, so I'm not doing it twice a week.
so so playbooks like the Hard Holder, or I mean Hard Holder in the one set of playbooks, or the Lawgiver. Is it Lawgiver in the
Yes.
Burn book? Are the
Yeah.
ones that are
So
like I'm in charge of the Enclave kind of thing.
that's not going to be something I'm real super interested in doing.
That's not your jam. Um,
Not for this game.
which is fine. That's totally fine, and that's good to know. I'm gonna partly one of the things that kind of attracts me to the Burn playbooks is the fact that it's a little smaller, a bit. So there's a few less choices. Partly because he took a couple of the playbooks and sort of mushed them together and figured out like actually the Chopper, which is like I'm writing a biker gang, and this other guy who's like a sort of a weird sort of personality cult leader, and this other playbook is this other thing, and they're all kind of like somebody who for one reason or another runs a group of people. Um, that's all been like mushed into one playbook, and you just kind of decide what your following is like. So, um, yeah, if you're not, so let's talk about some of these. You guys can sort of figure out what you think. I have the first one open. It's called the Brain Picker. Uh, when they burned the world down, they didn't know what would grow in its ashes. They didn't know that we would be born with our eager, hungry brains, our unblinkered eyes, our whispering, dangerous voices. This is a character who is very, very in tune with sort of the weird in the world, and that maelstrom that I mentioned sort of repeatedly in a lot of different stuff. They tend to I mean, honestly, the first thing that pops into my mind is stuff like the creepy girl from the creepy little girl from the Dune books. Um, uh, Paul's little sister. Wait for
Yeah.
wait for my brother, Baron. That kind of a thing. But yeah, um, this is a person who can, kind of has that, knowing what you're thinking, uh, can kind of tuck into the maelstrom and understand that kind of stuff. Uh, they have on the second page, they have some stuff about like what their gear is. Now there'll probably be some re-skinning of that um, as we kind of go, just because uh, I wanted to have more of a Fey feel than like the sort of weird tech kind of feel to it. Um, Somebody's mic is going crazy.
Sorry,
It's okay.
it's Loki.
Oh,
Loki is crawling on my chest and purring, and it's about 9 to 10 o'clock at night. My little black cat, he comes and decides to just really snuggle with me, and that means sitting on my chest, in my face, and snuggling on my whole body. And he's very sweet, but it's very demanding. So I'm trying to keep him away from the microphone, but
it's
of
all right.
course, he's a cat, and so he says, "Ooh, I can rub on that."
I hear you, Amanda. I've got the same problem, but with a white one.
Yeah,
Nice. Sounds like a helicopter in the mic. It's crazy.
I'm sorry.
It's all right.
He's
So
very loud. He's very happy.
So the brain pickers are spooky, weird, pretty fun to play. Powerful moves, weird moves. If you want everybody to be at least a little bit afraid of you, brain pickers are a pretty good choice. Um, you'll probably be well, you'll probably be happiest if people care about like trying to get in good with you, because that gives you a lot of, so putting yourself in situations where that works to your advantage is probably a good thing. Um, and that's sort of, any questions about that? Like could this mean what? The idea is, if we have this Fey magic, Fey power or whatever, this is somebody who's particularly in tune with it. Now, unlike some of the other possible playbooks that are out there, this is probably human, but for whatever reason, very in tune with it. But it could be lots of different things. I did use the setting once before in a different game system, and one of the players I think was sort of like this, like sort of the adopted son of, well, sort of the foster child of the priest that was still kind of running the cathedral or the church for the enclave. But he was actually a changeling that nobody had ever figured out was a changeling. Um, and being raised by the priest made it particularly kind of ironic. So yeah, you might not even be human. You just might pass really well. Who knows? But whatever you are, spooky is definitely one of the adjectives that comes up. So
Yeah, that was a character type that I was interested in, as well as from that apocalypse world.
the
Um,
brainer, yeah, it's a
the
brainer.
brain, actually, I was more looking at the hocus.
And the hocus is they have some spookiness. A lot of that is the certainly the fact that they have this. I almost want to say that one's less based on weird and more based on, in that game, hot, but sort of that the charismatic leader. Everyone sort of like um, sort of glommed onto that.
Yeah.
There's an apocalypse world actual play that. One second.
Jim, are you
Sorry.
mostly looking at the burned over stuff or the other
We're looking at
stuff?
we're looking at the burned over stuff. The burned over should be burned over like first 10 is what the name of the file is or something like that.
Yeah, now I am looking at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's on there.
It's the very first one is the brain picker, yeah. I completely lost my train of thought for that. Oh, the hocus. The hocus isn't in, sorry, the hocus isn't the hocus. I'll call out when we get to the thing that's hocus like in this one.
Okay.
But it really, the hocus is kind of almost like sort of a charismatic cult leader kind of. You can get to a weird place with it, but it's less weird than say less weird focused than say the brainer.
Okay.
There's a Apocalypse World actual play that I've been listening to that is sort of a weird mashup of like Fallout and Paranoia.
Oh my
Um,
lord.
and but it's like they're doing a Fallout Vault that was in Hollywood, and everybody either is or believes they are descendants of important Hollywood or stars, kind of a thing. And they kind of, because it's been so long, they kind of have lost track of the difference between the actor and the actual and the characters that they played. So it isn't just Bruce Willis. It's Bruce Willis is sort of this gestalt of all characters that Bruce Willis has ever played, um, in their head, sort of. But the hocus in that game was the descendant of Lady Gaga and the reconstituted DNA of David Bowie,
Oh lord.
named
Wow.
and her name was Extra, something like that. It was which because she was very extra, um, and her followers were all extravagance, spelled several different because it was extravagance like the noun, and extravagance like the group of like a group of people. Um, there's a lot of puns. Like I said, it was like is very much kind of spun off Paranoia. So Brain Picker, kind of a crazy kind of mental and or magical powers kind of thing. The next one down is the Medic. This one in the Apocalypse World thing would be the Angel. The same kind of idea. Some of the stuff is a little bit more. Again, the reason I like this one is some of the stuff is a little bit more elegant. There is a little bit of weird stuff in here. Being able to like sort of have a healing touch, maybe. Sort of a sixth sense for certain things happening around them. They have pretty good connection to the community. They tend to have a sanctuary, and there's some kind of cool choices you can make on the second page for like what your sanctuary is, whether or not you've got assistance with helping you.
That would be more my jam.
Yeah. And Amanda, you had talked about like having system security of some kind or skilled assistance or something like that. It occurred
Yeah.
to me that armed guards could be dogs. Like there's no reason that wouldn't
Right.
actually work. So if your jam is I want some angry like protected puppies.
Well, and the other thing is usually when I play games, I tend to go toward healer types.
Yeah.
Like on World of Warcraft, my main was always a holy pally.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. If you and it, if you want everybody to love you or at least rely on you, this is a good playbook for that. If everything's going great, they may not be relying on you because they're not needing to be patched up, but it helps to sort
But
of
how
upset.
likely is it that everything's going to go great?
There is a bit of a, I don't want to say doom spiral. Hang on one second. My daughter is being very, very patient with me right now because I'm sending her after a backpack that is apparently migrating. No, it's not a doom spiral. Okay, so let me put it this way. There is what people have called in this, the mechanics of this thing tends to be a snowball effect, because 7 to 9, that 7 to 9 range where you get kind of a mixed success of like you get what you want but more complications happen, tends to be the most common result because bell curves are a thing. And that can mean a lot of things, like that snowballing effect. So it's like now there's more complications. Now what do you do? Okay, well you did that and you kind of took care of it. Now what? But then now this other thing is happening. So now what do you do? Or maybe this other person can step in and help you. And what do you do? But it all tends to snowball. Now in a game like Masks, where you're playing like teen superheroes and it's more like Young Justice and Teen Titans, that snowball effect has got a certain kind of action feeling to it. In Apocalypse World, the snowball effect is more of that. We found a dumpster. We're going to set it on fire, jump into it, and push it down a very steep hill, and aim it at something. Now what do you do? It's a little bit more careening and dumpster fire-ish. So no, medics will kind of always be sort of important. So the sanctuary thing is very cool. Defensive weapons. I think it's really funny that like the medic doesn't have like on their list like a scalpel as a defensive weapon, but there is another playbook that does, because a medic's going to use a scalpel properly and somebody else is going to stab you with it in the middle of a fight, because that's kind of how they roll. The volatile is this. Oh, this is your fighter, basically. They got a little bit of touch with the psychic weird stuff, a little bit, but they're the person who's like, I'm going to solve this problem with violence.
This is Dean Winchester.
This is your Dean Winchester. This is your Jane from Firefly. In the Apocalypse World version of this, the serious weapons I think are called big fuck off weapons, because they're just dangerous people. But they're pretty straightforward. I'm gonna say they're pretty straightforward. I don't know that a lot needs to be said about them, but they tend to solve problems with violence. That's sort of their thing. If you want to be somebody who solves problems with violence, this is gonna be your thing. The Unalone is the next one, and this one's interesting because it can be a lot of different things depending on how you steer it.
Here's your bag.
Thank you. You're a wonderful person. I love and appreciate you.
That is correct.
That is correct. So the Unalone's thing is that they're connected to a group or kind of a pretty complicated group. They have a lot of abilities that point towards that, either as they have like their fingers in every pies, and they're people that sort of follow them around, or sort of their eyes and ears, or they're very much a performer and an extrovert and inspiring people, or maybe they're sort of psychically connected to them. So Kim, to your point, that if you look at that lost ability under the Unalone moves, that's some of that spooky stuff, like whisper their name into the maelstrom and they're going to come to you, with not really knowing why, but they show up. So there's definitely some weird there. It depends a little bit, and it's kind of interesting because you'll notice some of the improvements you can do are like, I want to move from an unused playbook. All right, well, I'm going to pick up some stuff from nobody used Brainer, so I'm going to pick up some more weird stuff. If you look at the second page, the blood, which is kind of like who your loyal, strong group of followers are, you pick two of those and they sort of combine. So, and there's some interesting combinations you can get there where it's like children and, choppers, which is like warrior children who, can get around really easily and fight like, a pack of rabid hyenas, or guardians, laborers, visionary. You can do a lot of interesting combinations there, or sort of a mix and match. So I've got children and elders, because having them together would be weird. And it gives some of the groups, some of the qualities that you pick there give you special abilities, or extra moves, I should say. Like insight gives you the ability to kind of get some advice, sort of from me, basically from your wiser members. So you might have like a visionary, you've got sort of you've got an oracle that just kind of hangs out with you, or whispers, you've got a grandma wormtongue, maybe not as creepy. I want somebody named Grandma Wormtongue who's actually like got that creepy name, but is really the nicest guy in the whole thing. So that's kind of that's the Unalone. Is there somebody who has a devoted group to them? Their relationship with their group is different depending kind of how the group is, and it's different than some of the other playbooks that might have some people working for them, but that's kind of their deal. The Vigilant, I mentioned to Kaylee earlier, and she's like, "Oh, that's Kate's jam." So the Vigilant.
Okay, what am I playing then?
Well, I'm just saying it's Kaylee's opinion. The Vigilant is, honestly, if I can come up with the thing I keep seeing over, and this is not a great example, but the thing I see every time I start reading these moves and stuff like that is Branch from the Trolls movie. If you want to really read
That's awesome.
right? I mean, I can't help. So this is the person who, well, the move that you get no matter what you do is Sniff the Wind. When you read a situation, you get a free additional question in addition to the question that you would normally get with that move. Who here is the most afraid? Who's keeping secrets from everybody else? How close are the wolves? In this case, wolves is a phrase that the Vigilant has in their head for the sort of walking around talking face of the Maelstrom, the wolves of the Maelstrom. And this Vigilant is sort of the Ranger of the North for the Enclave in terms of where they place themselves in between the wolves of the Maelstrom, and the people that they're sort of guarding. The name is, it's on the tin. So kind of a hunter, kind of a ranger, kind of a lay out a plan. You have a bolt hole. This is what always makes me think of Branch. You have a bolt hole that's a secure hidden bunker that you can live in for days, and you've got like a sawed off shotgun stashed in there, and food and water, and a radio contact maybe with other people, and that kind of stuff. You maybe understand your enemy's methods. You can see through their disguises and see what they really look like behind their stuff. And on the second page, the whole box there for Wolves of the Maelstrom lets you define, sort of the reality of, in some way, the Fae. In this setting, what we're doing with this thing. But basically, what do the Wolves of the Maelstrom, what do they look like? How do they appear? What do they really look like when you can see behind them? And then sort of like the hunter's weapons, special armor, things like that. So that's kind of, Kaylee has a very particular impression of you, and apparently she saw this and said, "Oh, it's Kate." I don't know if she may or may not be right, but that's one of the things. The gear cutter. The next one is somebody who tinkers and builds stuff out of the salvaged stuff of the sort of the fallen world. They're not exactly a mechanic. They sort of take that weird I talk to engines thing that Kaylee does in Firefly and turns that up to 15. Like they legitimately have like a weird bond with the old devices and stuff like that. It's weird.
So this would be the character that Mark would play.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
Pretty much all the way down to the ground.
Yes.
It's an open question as to whether or not they treat machines like people, and are very nice and warm to machines in ways that's weird, or if they treat people like machines and are somewhat standoffish and such, because it's not very nice to me because he talks the same way to me as he does to that Chevrolet he's got in the back garage. The only real risk with someone like a gear cutter is you need to figure out what you want with the character, because they're not really the one that's in charge, and they can sort of sit in their little workshop and tinker away and not really do much, which is, not as interesting and maybe not as fun in the long term. Nice to kind of dig around with. There is a cool thing you can do on salvage grounds in the back on the second thing with the gear cutter, where you're, where do you salvage, and that tells us stuff about the world. So by defining some of the places where you go out and salvage and pick stuff out of the ruins, or where you wander far afield away from the where we're at, it tells us about the world. A little bit more about it and stuff like that, which is pretty good. And that'll happen in a lot of the playbooks. There's stuff in there if you start digging through where it's like, you have 2 NPC guys, give them names, tell me what they want, and I'm going to do them up as threats. Now that sounds pretty scary, like they're going to betray me. Some threats are nice, some threats are reliable, some threats are friendly, but there's still people who can be threatened. Even if they aren't like necessarily gunning for your back, there's still people who are threats, because caring about anything is leaving yourself open to something, right? But so a lot of these, no matter who you are, with the exception of maybe the volatile, there's some part of your character sheet where you're defining some parts of the world, which is what I meant a lot of times when I say things like, I don't really know what we're going to do in the game, because a lot of this depends on what y'all end up deciding to do. The lawmaker, speaking of which, the lawmaker is, for simplicity's sake, if you pick the lawmaker, you're the person who's nominally in charge of the settlement where you guys are at. Now, it's possible to end up with a bunch of playbooks that aren't really tied to any one settlement. We're kind of roaming maybe around, the area and kind of bouncing between multiple ones. This is one of those ones that say, well, odds are pretty good that we're really going to be focused on one settlement, and it shall be here, because I'm running it. The lawmaker moves are pretty all kind of tied to that. Again, you get some of the stuff like ears in the walls where you have like you hear what's going on. A lot of like walking in and immediately asserting your presence. And then the backside of the lawmaker sheet, you're actually kind of defining the stronghold and saying like, what are the strengths and weaknesses of this place where we live? What do we have going for us? What do we have going against us? And in addition to controlling the stronghold, you also have a gang of bruisers that, gang of brutes that help you defend the place. And your relationship with them is complex and interesting. So that's the thing. That's not a thing Kim's going to be doing, as I understand it. So
Yeah, that's not for this game.
too much that you've already done. I'm not 100% sold on the weaponized as in terms of how it ties into this particular setting, because it's very much supposed to be like sort of like a heavily cyberized, mechanical parts in the body kind of thing, and that may be not necessarily a great fit, but if somebody's super excited about it, there's some things that would be very interesting to do where it's like maybe not cybernetics, but some weird like magical grafting there's like a prosthetics thing in here with a couple of these playbooks. Like if you want a prosthetic, talk to the GM about it, and there's a good chance that like some crazy prosthetic that works really well in this kind of setting to me might be made out of like woven branches and vines, which is a whole story in the background anyway, right? Alternately, there may be some other stuff that was in the other playbook, the other set of playbooks, that like the corrupted or something like that, that's also really closely tied to sort of the weirdness in the world that I might figure out a way to swap into the weaponized anyway, in place of the weaponized. But that's basically their thing is like, you're a machine built for war. You're at some point in time, this was like a thing that was done to you. I'm not sure that it fits, but if somebody's super gung-ho for it, I can certainly, some human that was spirited away by the Fae and broke out or got away after they did experiments and did things to your body and that kind of stuff. I could get some mileage out of that. So, if that's your thing, go for it. The Restless is, if you're looking at the other Apocalypse World playbooks, is sort of the driver, but it's kind of the person who's got a bit of wanderlust. They tend to look to the horizon a lot. They come and go a lot. They know a lot more about the area away from the settlements. You have a vehicle. You probably have a way to get on and off the island more easily, and reasons to do that. And you have connections with people on the horizon, which is what's kind of detailed on that on the back side of the on the second side of the character sheet. It's also worth noting that a lot of the moves don't necessarily, some of them do, but there's quite a few of the moves that don't necessarily depend on you being in a car. So it isn't like I'm useless if I'm not in the car. I've certainly run into that with like some RPGs. Like I made the character that's like a rigger from Shadowrun, and if I'm not in my car, I'm basically useless. These guys, the way these are written, kind of there's parallels for, if you have escape routes, that applies whether you're in a car or not. If you're a daredevil, that applies whether you're in a car or not. So you're just that kind of a troublemaker. Kind of combat-y, I guess. A little bit more of an explorer, that kind of stuff. Good for running blockades. And is this the last one? This one just recently got sent out by the guy who's writing the guy and the husband and wife who are writing the game. This is the Undaunted, which I guess is like the post-apocalyptic Mama Bear playbook. So there's a lot of the moves are definitely pointed at being a protector of children, really kind of specifically, confronting and defending them from the world, in extremis, um, Ripley from Aliens, that kind of a thing. But and there's certainly some other characters that sort of define that. And when you go to the backside of the sheet, you actually kind of define that pack of kids that you have like currently. And you also have kind of, it's a neat little thing. You don't really have any weapons, but you have lots of stuff to hand that can be used as a weapon. And you have like maybe a cool garden and that kind of thing. So in some ways, within the larger settlement, it's sort of a sanctuary within the settlement to a certain bit, because you've got this green space, I should say almost cultivated green space, because green space is not actually hard to come by in this setting. That's kind of the problem. So the only other thing I really kind of mention a little bit, if you look at any one of the play sheets, it doesn't really matter which playbook you look at, the stats on the side are sort of have a basic move attached with each one of them. Aggro is getting in somebody's face. It's not technically fighting, but it can certainly start fights, but kind of like confronting people, pushing them back, getting them to do what you want through sheer like sort of threats and force of will, that kind of thing. Cool is being cool, acting under fire, also charming or deceiving people, so that a little bit more subtle social interaction. Hard is the stat that comes up when you're doing battle, when you're like really honest to God, exchanging harm and beating the crap out of people and trying to kill them. Sharp is your, quick-wittedness and ability to kind of like read a situation quickly and read people and that kind of thing. And weird is weird. Weird is your connection to the the maelstrom of the world and the magic and all this weird crap that's happened to the world and being tied into it. The sixth stat, which doesn't necessarily look like a stat but is your HX or hex, or however you want to produce it. It stands for history in the same way that RX stands for pharmacy.
That stands for history and medical terminology as well.
Oh, does it?
HX.
Oh, well,
Yeah,
I did not know
that's
that.
a medical thing.
So yeah, it's the history, and that's where you record your sort of relationships with other people. Specifically, and I think predominantly in this game, it's not always this way depending on which game you're talking about, but in this game, it's really recording your relationships with the other players, the other player characters, I should say. And that matters. The strength of your relationship affects certain moves that you have that point at other people if you want to help them, if you want to interrupt them. And if you have cause to roll their hex for influencing them or whatever, it earns you XP, and that obviously progresses you forward. So using those relationships is good for character growth. Using the stats is good for character growth. Getting hurt is good for character growth. We'll talk about the XP stuff later, but that's really, I mean, hex should probably be considered the sixth stat, except it's kind of a multifaceted thing because it's pointing at relationships with. It's got more than one number in there, and you use it for helping people, interrupting people, and some other stuff too. So buttons. What? I guess. What are you guys thinking? You got any questions? Or stuff? Or why do I care? Or hey, you mentioned this other playbook and we haven't talked about that one yet. So tell me about this whatever.
I mean, I'm definitely seeing a couple things that seem interesting. It certainly feels to me like, we wanted out of game, we want to build a team. So like
we want to
I'm inclined.
I didn't quite catch that.
Out of game, it seems like we want to build a team. So I'm ready to sort of sit back and go, if somebody else feels strongly about this, what do we call them, playbooks?
Sure. Yes,
I
that is
can
what
sit
we'll.
back and pick last or what have you. I think I've got a couple of ideas.
And playbooks, I mean, we could call them character sheets if we really wanted to. I think this game is probably the first one. Playbooks get used a lot, terminology now. Um, uh, there's some reasons that they use playbooks as sort of the terminology, which is maybe a little bit. It's a set of options that you have for for tactical choices and stuff like that. Is sort of that the textbook definition kind of thing, and that is indicative somewhat of like what the heck they're for and stuff like that. Team, that's interesting. I would definitely say that regardless of what else you guys decide you want to do, you don't need to be friendly starting out, but you should definitely consider yourselves or approach things at least at the start as though you're allies. So, yeah, whether or not you're, out there against the world, against each other, is one thing, but definitely considering you like, we're all together. We're in this shit together, kind of a thing. So that's interesting. I like that.
So it's High School Musical?
I I cannot speak. I cannot speak to that. If all three of you can, then
I'm sorry. It was the way you phrased it. I'm sorry. There's a song.
I have no beef.
Okay.
And I know at least one
It
other
was just
person's
funny.
immediately responding to the High School Musical. So.
We're all in this together.
Oh
right
my
now.
Just get your head in the game,
Yeah. Oh,
okay?
really? Okay.
Man.
Oh, I had to watch it so many times because my best friend's daughters were really into it. Thank God they've kept Harry Potter more than High School Musical.
Yikes.
I worked hard to get them to be little geek girls. It's great.
That's good.
Raising them right.
Yeah, definitely. They're fantastic. They're 21 and 23 now, and they're great.
Okay, so Kate's doing what I'm thinking of. I have a name. I have a name for what Kate's doing, named after one of my other players, which is sitting back and saying, "Tell me all what y'all are interested in, and then I'll say something."
Sorry, I don't have to do that. I
No.
switched to push to talk so you don't hear me coughing. I mean,
No.
I can tell you a couple of the ideas that I have, if that works, and I have no attachment to any of them yet at this point.
Sure. I will say this. It's important to kind of put that stuff out there a little bit because in lots of role-playing games, the idea is like, well, he wants to do the fighter, so I'm not going to do it. And that's sort of a social thing. There is actually specifically stated here, if somebody has a playbook, nobody else gets that playbook. Because in a I guess it's almost a fiction thing, but it's mechanically speaking, if you're what am I looking at right now? If you're the Undaunted, capital T, capital U. There isn't another one in all the world, specifically at this play table, but there might be NPCs that have stuff kind of going on that's like the Vigilant. Maybe there's a bunch of people who are protecting the town, out there patrolling, looking to the horizon, doing that stuff, but you're the Vigilant. You're the driver, the Restless or whatever. So speaking up and saying that kind of stuff is useful for people to know, just so you can kind of, if everybody speaks up and like nobody mentions a certain playbook, then we know at least that one's kind of off the table or simplified or whatever.
Okay, so
I'm still interested in the medic.
Okay, good to know.
So I will say, like, my perspective on, if we go with what Kaylee thinks I should play, I like the idea of the Vigilant, as the sort of Aragorn, but I see it also as Inara in Firefly.
Interesting. Can you dig into that a little bit more? A little bit?
Well, so not necessarily the episodes that aired, but that idea that, this companion school that she went to, is about understanding men. And so the perspective on it here is like knowing details about what we're facing and being additionally skilled in ways that are unexpected. So, yeah, we can totally use it as a sex thing, but also when I'm having sex, I could totally read your brain, pick your mind, stab you to death.
Just kind of knowing knowing them and possibly knowing them in the biblical sense.
Yes, and also my thought on I again, I went to the bolt hole is that ship that Inara had. That was her sacred space.
Sure. And I'm gonna love hearing about what that is if that's the thing. So certainly that's it sounds like you have some neat ideas. Was there another one that was kind of piquing
The
your
other
interest?
one that I first thought of was, I mean, honestly, looking at the brain picker and playing it as a sort of descendant of a changeling.
Ooh.
Like I don't know how many generations, but
In my
the
head,
changeling who got left, the changelings who were on Earth
right.
before the apocalypse,
Ooh.
who didn't come into their glory. They were kind of left behind as tainted. And
So this is like this long meandering.
They're like the yeah, because I'm on that same wavelength, Kate, where they're like they've kind of lived, and they might have lived for a long time, like multiple generations,
Yeah, this
and they've
this sort
just
of
kind
thin-
of
right. And I'm willing to take it. Yeah, I'm willing to take it as sort of like the changeling when the apocalypse happened, who was like, well, now the Fae don't care about what happens to me because they get to walk around Earth now.
Yeah, I'm
So
no longer the go-between. I'm
no longer the go-between, so I'm gonna find a human settle with, and I'm their kid or
nice. I like it.
grandkid, depending on what the timeline
Well,
is.
yeah, I mean, in my head, and sort of the game's default assumption, it's been about 50 years. Now, it hasn't been, I play around with this a little bit because, like, the rot and decay of civilization is accelerated somewhat. I would say probably at least twice as much time. If you're thinking about, like, how much would be left of the suburbs or whatever, it's more like what would happen to those buildings over the course of say 100 years or whatever. But let's say it's been about 50 years timeline wise since the big event, and it's still 2 or 3 generations since it happened. I mean, in some have sort of probably 2 new generations since then, maybe a very young third generation. Although at the same time, you could still have that oldest generation who might, the oldest people in the settlement might remember as a child the days of
before.
the days before and what it looked like at the time and I think I said something about that today. Remembering the people who were in power and the authorities and stuff still trying to clutch at that and maybe doing horrible things to. I'm reading a book right now called Building Paradise in Hell about how people act in catastrophes, possibly background reading for this, and in big things like that. And one of them was the earthquake in San Francisco in 1906, and how the army and a lot of the other authorities in the city, all of their actions could clearly be seen to be defending the city from the people rather than protecting the people. And they can the old people in the settlement could certainly tell stories like that from when this has happened, because we certainly haven't gotten any better at that in only 100 years. So that's a cool idea. I like that one. There's some neat stuff
and I
there.
freely also admit that I like the mother bear option of the Undaunted.
Undaunted is a really cool
not
playbook.
necessarily. I don't see it as the Ripley type character. I see it as
There are
Wendy with the Lost Boys.
Ooh, yeah, I like that. That's fun. That's fun. And I will point out that every one of the playbooks has at least one option for get a move from some other unused playbook. So if there's some fun mixing and matching there of like, the vigilant with a move handpicked out of the brain picker and Mama Bear from out of the Undaunted that's quite a thing. There's stuff there. There again, unused playbook. So who knows? Undaunted is really interesting because it has no parallel to any playbook, really, at least from the author's point of view, from Apocalypse World. for them, from their point of view, it is new and kind of maybe a pure reflection of how Burned Over is a little bit different than the baseline Apocalypse World. Anyway, Kim,
Um, I'm
what are you
looking
thinking
at
about?
Brain Picker and The Unalone.
Oh yeah. Uh, so and so now I'm putting into context when Kate was talking about that sort of like the changeling through line, kind of reality changing when this apocalypse happening and you going, I'm kind of feeling that. Um, I'm putting that in the context of I was actually kind of looking at that playbook and this sounds like an interesting thing for you. Is that concept something that is still something that would be something that speaks to you if you were playing it, or just kind of I like that
Oh,
jam?
yeah, absolutely feeling it like to play it.
Oh, okay.
Kind of my spin on that is a changeling, the Fae are rumored to be, ever living, and a changeling could have been pre-apocalypse,
Oh yeah.
and then really just working their time through uh, going from one family or one organization to another.
Yeah.
And then when, shit hits the fan, suddenly it's like, oh, this is now my world.
Yeah. And they're actually more,
And
in some ways, more attached to that than the other, which is
yeah,
interesting.
and it's like, in order to survive this world, because the Fae are going to do their own thing, and I've got to figure out how to make this human world work for me
And
and
that's
utilize what they already know, but also use those psychic abilities to figure out how do I fit in best right now.
and we certainly talked about the Unalone. I love that, by the way. We certainly talked about the Unalone. The only thing I want to point out with the Unalone is because you're talking about being the one who's, and it may be that you're talking more about being the player facing, making decisions type of person. And the Unalone isn't exactly that, but if I'm doing my due diligence and you're playing the Unalone, there are definitely going to be people in your face all the time asking you what to do next.
Sure. With the Unalone, I'm looking at that more of a um, kind of trying to wrap my head around having an enclave of people that are near and dear to them, not necessarily blood, but
Right. Blood is really kind of in air quotes. I mean, there's no doubt
yeah,
about that.
yeah, that it's like I will do anything to keep these people alive.
Right. And they're looking to you for that thing, whatever that is. Um,
Yeah.
so I realize as we keep talking about this that we've talked about so much, or at least I've talked so much about it in email. You guys have too. About the concept that we haven't actually sort of officially said like what the apocalypse is, which is the, for whatever reason, um, the world went to hell, 50 years ago, and maybe it was maybe it was somebody doing a really bad, maybe a summoning spell, or but for whatever reason, the Fae came back, and they're angry, and the Wild Hunt did what the Wild Hunt does, and it, a lot of people died, most people died, except for the ones that were holed up in the really kind of densely packed, as far as really kind of densely packed um, city areas. I have both because the art's really hard to find, really easy to find, and also because geographically it's useful to me for some of the other stuff, and also because when I first kind of came up with the idea, I'd been reading the World Without Us, which is at least in one chapter sort of examines like what happens when nobody's maintaining the infrastructure in New York, and I'm like, I love this. This is really, I could game this, and really did. So the idea here being that whatever we're doing, we're somewhere on the island of Manhattan, which has, flipping back over to the picture from Roll 20 here, bridges are starting to fall down. The island's really much more of an island between the water levels having risen and a lot of the bridges going down, and some of the other ones being pretty shaky and buildings falling apart and stuff, you've got a situation where you're kind of isolated, a little bit safer from the Fae, at least the pure Fae, with some exceptions like the big central park thing and what might be living in the Ramble and stuff like that. So that's
Not
it.
to talk about the water around the island.
Not to talk about the water around the island and stuff. Although there's been at least some, I think I called it Endian Point instead of Indian Point, but there is a nuclear power plant about 35 miles north of Times Square that's whose reinforced concrete is probably cracked in the last 50 years and may have made the water somewhat untenable for Fey creatures to cross. At least for the first 30 years or so. There are haddock and not smelt. What's the other? I can't remember the other really common fish that used to like really just fill up like the Hudson and stuff like that. It starts with an S, but I can't remember what it is. It's a really short name. I mean, the fish have come back, but it took them a while to get used to the readouts on the Geiger counter. But yeah, the river being right there, and what might be in the river now, following some adaptation and stuff like that. Whether or not the tunnels are still intact, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, super interesting there. Amanda, did you have any other? Not that I mean, you don't have to. The answer can simply be no. Were there any other playbooks besides the medic that kind of jumped out at you, or like, nope, that's my Huckleberry? You don't have to say yes. It's fine if you say no.
I understand. I would be able to play any other ones
Sure.
if you felt that it was necessary in the group to have a particular
It is
type.
definitely not how the game works. So I'm fine with that. I just want to make sure I circle back and didn't. Oh, he never asked me if I was anything else I liked. I just want to make sure that I've double checked.
No, I mean, you know, I don't understand the brain picker at all. Although since it's first, it seems that it's kind of a.
No, this stuff's
You know.
in basically alphabetical order, so don't worry about it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so don't worry about it. But honestly, not really very good enough. Honestly, it's been in the order of the ones that he wrote. Like they're just I just grabbed them as he was releasing them and slapped them into a PDF. So I think they're kind of in order of which ones he wrote up. I say he, although it's Vincent and Meg that have been releasing the thing.
I mean, being a scientist, I could be a gear cutter.
Sure.
You know, that could work for me.
But if the medic is what is your jam, then don't worry about it.
That tends to be my comfy place.
Yeah. All right. So we got that interest there. Kim, which way do you think you're leaning? If you had your druthers, we probably.
I'll have to. I'm not going to make a decision right off the bat because I'll have to kind of ponder some thoughts about it.
Okay. Well.
I mean, the first gut reaction upon reading this was the brain picker, but I'm sure that given an overnight, it's like, oh, but this would be really cool.
That's totally fair. Kate, what are you thinking?
I would say I'm thinking probably the Vigilant.
Cool. I mean, I'll be honest.
Okay.
I'll be honest. If I were playing, well, I'm playing the game. I shouldn't say if I were playing the game. If I were not playing the MC, I would literally be knife fighting you for that character. That is my jam all the way to the ground. I mean, yeah, I'll play Rangers I'll play Tolkien Rangers all day. So I'm sitting here nodding along, going, yeah, do it. But Kaylee's up here saying, that's right. I picked it. I nailed it.
Well, it's partly because she picked it that I gave it a second thought.
You gave it another look? Yeah. You know, self-fulfilling prophecies, right? Okay. So I will say if people want to now, so we have a couple. I tell you what I'm going to do. I think I know what I'm going to do. I got this kind of worked out a little bit. We're going to walk through since we Amanda. I think it's pretty clear. You know what you kind of know what you want to do. Yes, and it sounds like Kate kind of does. So
Yeah.
I
So then
want.
I get to pick.
Well, you don't have to, Kim. I'm not corner you, but uh, like I said before, I kind of don't know what we're gonna do until we figure out our playbooks. So I want to get a little bit more of that done. If we're all done with those guys, and Kim, you're like, I still want to sit on it, great, fine. If you're like, no, I've heard enough from what everybody else is saying that I think I've got a way I could really, I've got something now I want to do.
Okay.
Then great, we can do that. Okay. So, uh, and the nice thing is, I want to say this is kind of a key bit. Um, it's worth noting that outside of like the sheet, like the little sheet, and I'll get it up here under Roll20 so we can see it. That has like the list of the basic moves, like what do I do when I want to punch somebody? What does it look like when I'm doing that? Other than the list of basic moves, the playbook is really, truly all you need to play. You don't need the rule books because your character is in that playbook and it really is kind of all your options with the exception of sort of the generic, I shouldn't say generic, but the basic moves. And it really does work that way. You can learn, I mean, once there's a certain amount of game jargon that's intentional. It's part of that whole like, now you know the game kind of thing. But in a very real way, the the playbook is kind of all you need, and that's okay. So I got I
So
printed.
can you explain,
Sure.
Joyce, how you can use other parts of the playbooks that have not been selected?
So let's talk about XP and see how and look at how this thing works. So the way this, and it's kind of described on the back side. So I'm gonna flip over to the character sheet here. Up on the PDF here, and we're gonna look at the medic. We're gonna look at the medic so we kind of get into each other's heads here with this thing. And I'm gonna scroll back up along my.
Oh, good. I printed it
Well, aren't you lucky? Yeah,
because
perfect.
I'm old school.
That's good because you're gonna have to scribble some stuff on there, and I've got a copy here so I can scribble what you scribble. There will be an electronic version that we'll use in Roll20, but I have to build it because it's not all done up for me, so I'm gonna have to. But that's fine because Kate can't play next Friday, so I got 2 weeks to get this hacked up into a thing that doesn't make me want to tear my own eyeballs out. All right. So I want to show you, if you look at the second page of your medic thing, and this is kind of the same on everybody's sheet, it says improvement. It says when, but really what it should say is whenever you roll a stat, roll hex, or suffer harm, mark experience. And if you look on the other side of the character sheet, there's little spots where you can for those of you who are teachers in the elementary school system may recognize the bubble that you need to fill in with a pencil. So you mark XP next to, like if you roll aggro, you roll cool, you roll hard, whatever, you mark the little XP thing. You only get one each, so you can't just keep rolling hard 50 times and level up. You mark XP when you roll one of the stats. Once you have marked 4 of those little XP bubbles that are scattered around the sheet, you erase them and check one of the experience bubbles that are up there in the middle of the sheet under improvement.
I see.
Okay, so you go tick, 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 ding, tick, 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 ding. When you get 5 of those all filled in, you erase them and you pick an improvement bubble off of the thing that's somewhere above the line. Okay. So,
I'm sorry, I'm gonna have you go back over that because it says 4 experience but 5 bubbles. Was that why?
So you
why
mark,
is that
so
difficult?
there's 4, you mark 4 experience, like where it says experience look over next to aggro.
Yeah, I see it.
And so you mark 4 experience bubbles, and when 4 experience bubbles are marked, you erase them from around the sheet and tick that little thing up that's between the word experience and improve. You mark one of those little guys.
Okay, so
All right.
technically you got to get 20.
Yeah, you got to get 20, but what it does is sort of throttles the XP that you can get from like really like say you you're always going to hit the crap out of weird because your weird's really high. Well, you could really kind of farm weird in an MMO sense over and over and again. So it somewhat limits it, but it doesn't completely screw you by saying you can only ever do it once out of 20 possible, because that would be terrible. So there's sort of a reset in there as you're ticking this up. But yeah, ultimately you need to get you need to get like little 20 experience ticks, and then you get an improvement, and you pick one of those things off the improvement list. Raise your
So
sharp. Go
it
ahead.
looks like with history, there's 2 boxes for
Yes,
experience.
and that's worth. Yes, thank you. So you can get experience from getting hurt, or rather rolling the harm move, but whatever. You can get a couple ticks from history, which means the moment to moment, the best engine for experience points is your relationships and interactions with other people. Because if you're helping somebody or interacting with somebody, you mark that thing. And
So when you say other people, is that NPCs or PCs?
usually PCs.
Okay.
And there's a couple reasons for that, because there isn't much reason to help NPCs because they never roll for anything. Put another way, I never roll for anything. GM doesn't
Got
touch. The GM does not touch dice in this system. Period. Ever.
Got it.
So, and it's like, well, how do NPCs hurt you? When you roll bad, I get to hurt you, or whatever. That's if you're in the middle of a fight, like the roll is not just the roll of how you're doing, it's also kind of how you're doing on both sides of things. So it's the whole gestalt view of the battle, and that's true for social interactions. It's true for seducing somebody. It's true for trying to deceive or intimidate somebody, or reading someone. It's always kind of the whole sides of the thing. So it's really just, for me personally, Powered by the Apocalypse games are diceless. And I have a long history of diceless games, so it's kind of, to a certain extent, kind of my GMing jam. It works okay. And I like it better than the other diceless games I used to run, so it kind of works out. Anyway, so back to what you were saying, Amanda, what you were originally asking. You'll see under the improvements box there, you can raise your stats. You can get a new medic move because you get a certain number when you first start out, but you can add more. You can add additional options to your sanctuary, so your sanctuary can get cooler, or get more stuff, or get more people, or whatever. I'd really like a security system. I want to put some tripwires up or something. Or you can pick up
an extra dog.
yeah, or an extra dog, or you get a move from an unused playbook. So if you're like, I like what I got here thus far, but no one's doing the whatever. No one's doing the Undaunted, and I got my eye on this Undaunted move, and I'm gonna yoink that. I'm gonna take that and write it down under the other moves section in the bottom of the sheet there. So I've got this other move that I pulled from something else. So there's a level of customization that you can play with here in this. I've actually seen versions of this game where, some version of Powered by the Apocalypse games where everything is just options off of a big, gigantic laundry list. So everything is a custom thing. Some people love it. I find it exhausting. Like, it's too much customization. So if you look at the second side of the back side of the sheet, they kind of walk you through some decisions you have to make to create your medic. You choose your name and pronouns. Now it says, he's very specifically vague about this. It says choose names and pronouns. The assumption there is like, these are the names I get to choose from. What it says, it doesn't say choose from this list of names and pronouns. So if your choice is, I want to make up my own name, that's fine. I'm not trying to say you have to be named X, whatever that happens to be. So figure out what your names and pronouns are. Look at the first impressions thing and sort of follow those things, and you want to say what your first impression is, and that gets written on the front sheet. I have something I want to loop back to on that, because there's a thing I want to do with that I find interesting, and I want to kind of just talk about that real quick, because it'll be true for everybody. And I'm going to pull that up so I can kind of think about what that is here real quick. You pick your stat set. One of those 4 lists of stats, the bullet list items, you pick one of those combos. They figured out the math on it. Sometimes it's complicated, sometimes it's not, but they've sort of figured out the stuff that works. And whatever it is, you can kind of rest assured that you're not going to accidentally put points into stats in a way that's stupid, or that you're going to regret later. You may regret it. You're probably going to regret something. You're like, oh, I wish I was harder. Whatever.
You will most assuredly
Yeah,
regret.
you would definitely. Oh, yeah, regret will be built in. Man, I wish I was aggro right now. I should have. Oh, if only I'd known. Well, now you know. And then you look down at effects. It'll tell you a few things there that you're supposed to do. Some of it will be meaningful. Some of it will be meaningless. That's totally fine. You get all the basic moves. You get field medic, and then choose one more medic move off the front of the sheet, and then it tells you what gear. You get your sanctuary, you get your defensive weapon, blah 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 blah. Okay.
Mhm.
I think they do he does a very mean thing here in that the very first thing you have to do is pick out your name. And if you've ever played any role-playing game ever, you know that's like the worst and hardest thing that you have to do right off the bat. So the only thing I'm going to mention about this, I want to loop back to first impression real quick, is you pick one or more of these things that are like the first impression that you give that people are going to pick up from you when they meet you. I have only one requirement for this, and it can be if you only pick one, that's fine. But one of those, whether it's the only one or one of your first impression things, I want one to be noted with a question mark. Okay? And what I mean by that, what that's meant to indicate is that this thing is both very true to the character and that it's mostly true, but there are exceptions which may or may not be communicated, and those exceptions are damn well going to come out and play. Okay, so a paladin, we use a D&D example. A paladin who has honorable is honorable. No questions, they're honorable. Done. Boom. If they're honorable with an exclamation point, which I guess if you want to do, you can totally do, then they're like super honorable. James Holden from the first book of the Expanse series is got honorable with a big exclamation point.
Sorry, that's really funny.
He's got a big.
Yeah, I hate his character so bad.
Oh yeah, right. He's got this big fuck off exclamation point right after honorable and that kind of thing. Whatever. If a paladin has honorable question mark after their name, this raises questions. When is he not? When is she making some harder choices? When et cetera, so forth. So when you're looking at your first impression stuff, look at the thing that is something that I'm going to look at and go, okay, I'm going to push on that. This is the thing that is mostly true, except in this cases. I might be impatient, question mark, because, heart of gold kind of thing. Some of them work better. Skeptical or patient or impatient or angry or caring or crude, caring with a question mark. This actually flips back to work. I say this all the time at work. I'm very, very diligent about making sure that my coworkers get out of work at a good time and are not coming in on the weekends. And I shake my finger at them very sternly if they're not doing that, and I'm telling them about thing and like, dude, you got an 11-month-old kid, 11-year-old kid, doesn't really just go home. And they're like, he's always watching House Force. I don't give two shits about you people. You're establishing a situation where it's becoming normal to stay in on the weekends and stay late, and that affects me. So stop fucking doing it.
You're establishing a culture.
Yeah, and it seems like caring, but question mark? Is he caring, or is he in fact incredibly selfish and expressing it in a caring way? So that's maybe me. Something like that. We can walk through this if you have questions and kind of go through this bit by bit. I think there's certainly some mileage in that because I'd like to know about your sanctuary, and certainly other people are going to want to know what the deal is with the healer's sanctuary. So if you would be more comfortable, we can walk through it that way, or you can start poking at the character sheet and we can talk about the options that Kate has on the Vigilant. If we want to do that, which would you prefer? Do you want us to like walk through it with you, or do you want to like poke at it by yourself while we talk about somebody else? I'm asking Amanda.
I'm poking at my character sheet. Sorry.
Okay, awesome. So you poke at your character sheet, and I'm going to loop back to you and see kind of what we, figure out what you want to do. I do want to hear about it, but
I'm poking at it. I'm trying to figure out what the different like how the different stats are going to benefit me and when.
Right. You'll notice that all of them have sharp as a. So let's talk about the stats real quick.
Yeah, sharp is a +2 on all of them.
The numbers will range from a negative. The lowest they can get is like a -3. The highest that they're going to get is like a +3. You're not going to see anything higher than that. You probably won't see anything as lower than a -2. And you're definitely not going to see anything higher than a +3. So that, and 3 is like crazy good. Three's the max. 3 is the 1800 of stats. If you want to go really old school, D&D. 2's, I shouldn't say bad. It's not about being bad. It's about that particular stat causes drama in your life. If you're, cool is low, it's not that you're not social. It's just that social interactions tend to cause you drama.
Easily flustered, possibly.
Yeah, sure. If your aggro is low, it doesn't mean that you're not constantly in your face and screaming at people. It just doesn't usually work out super well for you. Or it tends to cause complications, or there's usually fallout or whatever. Okay. Kate, you're sitting right next to a printer. Do you need me to bring you down a copy of the volatile sheet?
No, I really don't. I've already printed it out.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I don't have to walk 2 floors. Also, I think my Bluetooth headphone was cut out at some point.
Also, it's literally my printer.
That's a good point. Okay, so that's kind of, so to look at the different stat sheets, like aggro, if you look at kind of like what on the front sheet, it's meant to, you know what, let me get a sheet. Let me look.
Yeah, they add up to the same.
They usually do. Some of the
Yeah.
playbooks are a little bit different, and there's reasons for that. That if you really want to get super number crunchy grognardy, there's reasons for that kind of stuff. I'm gonna grab a picture and just drop it here into the middle of the Roll20 to kind of look at, for you guys to take a look at. I think it should display pretty nicely.
Oh, there it is.
Oh, is that the
Look,
big?
it's a
Oh,
thing.
that's not the one. That's not the one I want. This is the one I want. Uno momento. And then we're going to make this a little thing you can click on the side of the, like in the toolbar on the side. But for right now, it's just an image on the thing. So you kind of, looking at these moves, you look at the stat that it's asking you to roll. So confront someone, you're confronting, you're intimidating, you're threatening, or bluffing someone, you roll and add aggro. Roll plus aggro. And then here's what happens if you roll these different numbers. The basic moves are very interesting in that when the failure stuff is usually written as, on a miss, get prepared for the worst. Because these basic moves are meant to be very generic. Act under fire might mean that you're crawling across a wrecked street while people are filling the air with bullets. It might also mean that you're trying to get out of bed and get out of the bedroom before the person that's across the bed from you wakes up. It might also mean that you're trying to have a conversation with somebody about the way that they talked to somebody the day before, and you want to make sure that they stay calm throughout it and you don't draw attention to yourself with everybody else that's nearby. So it's kind of any of that. So since it's generic, what a failure looks like might be different every single time. And that's true for kind of all of the moves on here. The failure state is not very specific. But it kind of gives you an idea of like, if you want to be good at acting under fire, you probably want a decent cool, and that may come up with stuff with say surgeries kind of stuff. If you want to be good at charming people, and good in the sense that it tends to go your way, cool's good. Reading someone tends, so if you look at like, you're always good at sharp, no matter what spread you pick on that medic. Read someone and read a situation are both moves that kind of lean into the stuff that so you're good at noticing things, you're good at analyzing things in people, and that kind of stuff.
Right.
So that's kind of where that stuff sits. Cool? So
Yep.
Between referencing that and looking at the spreads, you can kind of look at it and say, okay, well, this version of a medic would be this kind of person, and this version of a medic apparently punches people a lot or whatever.
Yeah.
Cool?
Yeah.
All right. And I'm just gonna kind of, I want to flip. I'm flipping down to the volatile. Actually, I flipped down. It's not like it's right next to the medic. That's convenient. Um, the other things, and I definitely want to hear about the sanctuary because there's some stuff in there that tells me things about whether or not there's people I need to worry about detailing. I know why they don't have like I know why they don't have guardian pets. I don't have a problem with guardian pets, by the way. Amanda had contacted me earlier and said like, well, what if I just want like, you mentioned oh God.
A horse, a dog,
Yeah.
some that doesn't mention horses at all,
Well, and
which seems odd. But it
well,
does say that dogs are basically have rebred with coyotes and wolves.
well, and I kind of threw that in there because they don't really talk about it too much either. And the reason is because they're kind of defaulting to the sort of Mad Max
Apocalyptic.
apocalyptic vehicle porn.
Sure.
A little bit. And not, yeah, they spend more or less time on that. So yeah, the horses don't really come up. And also on Manhattan Island, horses get a little bit. You got to kind of squint to figure out like maybe the cab horses and some of the police horses, and where did they get one that wasn't neutered, kind of thing. They could have gone feral and bred, I guess, maybe question mark. Somebody ran.
There's lots of horses that aren't neutered.
Sure, but usually not in police service on the island.
There's other stables on Manhattan than just
Oh, really?
not just the police
Yeah.
stables. Yeah,
Yeah, lots of people ride.
Cool. Love it.
Yeah.
So yeah, there certainly ways, and it's hand wavy for me to say, okay, well, you guys have got stable horse, whatever. It actually works nicely for keeping some of the grass grays back on one of the parks or something. So, and I know, but the thing is, I know why. Like in here, they've got something for armed guards, gang, small, 2-arm armor. What I'm very likely to do in a situation like that, it's like, well, I want a couple of them to be dogs. That's fine. It's not going to all be dogs, and I'll tell you why. Apocalypse World cares about your relationship with other people. So I've got to have guards there who are guarding you for some reason because they care about you, or they just care about the fact that the doc can't get hurt, or whatever. Because dogs, as we know and love about dogs, are unquestioning and loyal. And while that's awesome in the terms of personal drama, it's also boring. So we got to have some people in there because they're going to make things more complicated. They have dogs' drives are pretty straightforward.
Yes, and so are horses.
And that's why, and that's why we love them. But at
Are
the
you
same
going to
time-
feed me?
Yes.
Hello, lady. Hey, lady.
It sounds very dog-like also, so it all kind of works out. So yeah, definitely want to hear about the sanctuary because that's gonna that's kind of your character is one of the ones with a stationary place.
Right.
And that's important to know. So does the volatile, but it's a little bit, or not volatile, sorry, the I said volatile before. So does the vigilant, but it's different. It's not necessarily defining a portion of the settlement.
Yeah, the other thing that I was considering as
Mhm.
far as being this character, I mean, I know I kind of called Medic out first, but I was thinking that a way to play it would be that the children of the Undaunted could be not children. They could be dogs, horses, whatever.
Yes.
I'm not saying that's, doable.
Well, you in that case, you're kind of getting into that whole wild hunt because, mythologically speaking, a lot of those creatures are definitely sentient.
And I mean, okay, so as far as that goes, I'm fine with it. But the thing is, and this is the bit with the hidden bit with the odd down to the stuff is like the reason they're children is because then I can do PC, NPC, PC triangles because they're your kids. But what happens if one of them, they're your kids and you don't keep weapons around and you keep a garden. But what happens when one of your kids idolizes the driver who keeps driving out of town and disappearing for weeks at a time? What happens when one of the other ones thinks that the vigilant who goes and kills people all the time, and brings back like, is leading the group that's going out and hunting down fairies? What if they think they're really cool? Because that's, more drama generating. If they're dogs and cats, well, probably not cats. Oh, Maine Coons. No. Anyway, if they're dogs again, you don't get that dramatic thing because a dog loves who a dog loves, and it doesn't matter if the dog was originally adopted for dad if they love mom better. Not that I'm bitter. To, to, Toby. Anyway,
Excuse me. It's just because I spend more time with him and he's very crazy.
yeah, he's definitely crazy. Anyway, all right. So that's part of it. I want the dogs to be around because I think that that's fun, but I want there to be a lot of people around. I would aim for the medic. I think it's probably going to be
I think it seems the logical choice.
yeah. I mean, not that there aren't a lot of similarities between kids and pets. Um, Certainly in cleanup necessities and training commands work great on anyone up to about 3 years old, but beyond that, it kind of falls apart. I can't get my 13-year-old to sit on command hardly ever, unless she already is. Where'd she go? Oh, she's not hearing me. Oh man, you missed while I was like talking about you behind your back.
Well, what's new?
Okay. I think she just went to go get her homework. Are you feeling well?
Go get my towel.
Oh, okay. Anyway, all right. So, other questions, stuff about the medic while you're going through and checking stuff off and figuring out how you want things to be? Or I'm gonna loop down to the. In the meantime, I'm gonna loop down to the vigilant for a bit. Is that cool?
That's fine.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So vigilant. Again, a lot of the creation stuff on the second page is pretty straightforward. You know, choose a name, choose your pronouns. Your first.
Yeah. Skip ahead. I've done all
Skip.
that.
Okay,
Um,
fine. You got your stats all figured out already.
I got all my stats. I'm
Another-
down to gear.
Another
But
sharp
it's
character.
confusing. Yeah, she's super sharp, but I went with the third one. So aggro, cool, sharp, negative, weird.
Interesting.
Because I think I mean, cool. I have to have the plus on cool to charm.
True. True.
The way I want to play it.
So yeah,
Um,
and that totally. I will point out. Yeah, there's pros and cons there for a lot of them.
I don't
You
want to game the system. I'm playing it like this is what she would do,
No,
and so
there's
that's what I'm doing. Like
it's not a gaming thing. I'm just looking. So the only reason I'm thinking of is like, depending on what you end up doing with your moves, like some of them point it weird, and that just means that that not necessarily a strong move for you, or one that you would maybe even be using. Like so, peel back to the skies. I was mostly just looking and saying, is it gonna hurt you having your weird at a -1, or in an unfun way? If it hurts you in a fun way, whatever. I'm all good with that. So that was.
I kind of like it because even if I'm doing peel back the disguise, it's not. If I get it wrong, it's not clear, but you get an unclear sense of what's going on from what I'm reading.
Yeah, you get a glimpse unclearly, and that just lets me, telegraph future badness and all that kind of stuff. So that's all. And there's interesting downsides to that because it causes effects of like your allies nearby, things like that. So super fun. All right, you figured that stuff up. You were looking at the gear. Is
So
that?
yeah, so I'm down to effects and gear. So if I pick, I find the sheet a little confusing because you choose your gear, so then I got to go down to gear.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm choosing my hunter weapon of a bow because hello, it's me.
Okay.
Leathers for the armor, clothing, which I'll figure out, living space, blah 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 blah. But in terms of what do I need to write down, or do I need to write down in the weapons and armor box? Like, do I need to note that 2 harm or 1 armor?
It's enough for me now for you to just kind of fill in the bubble. If you want to write in bow on the other side so you know which one to go and look for real quick, that's fine. I would definitely I would definitely note in the armor 1. And honestly, under weapon, you could just put the number 2, like bow, and just say harm 2. I mean, I'm going to know a lot of those. The tags are just sort of indicative. There's 3 things that tags do. 2 harm is really straightforward. It says how much harm they do. This is not a negotiable thing. We don't roll damage. It's just a flat amount. 3's about as bad as you're going to see on anything that's pointed at people and gets held by people until you get into those big
Yep.
fuck off weapons that like the volatile has. Um, there's some stuff about how they're meant to be used. So the close far thing, like they can be used close, they can use far away. Reload, kind of straightforward. And there's also in some cases tags that indicate what I'm meant to be saying about what happens. So tripwire charge has a tag of messy. So it doesn't just do harm, shit gets blown off. Nothing ever goes, you know, if those people who may have ever played Dragon Age and everybody at the end of every fight, all of your characters are covered in blood spatters and stuff like that. Apparently every single weapon in the entire video game is messy. So that just indicates things to me. Tattooed sigils of protection being really good armor but unreliable indicates things.
Okay.
So and that because you are meant, and there's a sheet, and I'll get it here as a reference where the tags are sort of explained and what that means you're supposed to do and stuff like that. But in most cases, it's pretty straightforward. So write down whatever you want to write down there as far as that. You went with the elaborately decorated leathers. Did I understand
I
correctly?
did go with the elaborately decorated leathers.
I love it. It says a lot about the character, honestly. I want to
Yeah.
hear though about the wolves of the Maelstrom. You know the wolves of the Maelstrom. You might be the only one who does. Under their disguises, they look like, I'm going to ask not machines, but beyond
No, not machines.
certainly the images that I was finding and sharing on some of those little music videos and trailers and stuff like that, I was using some weird insectile imagery, but that's again just me playing around. I don't care, and I'll play with whatever. So when you can see underneath the guise of the Fae, that's sort of what I'm saying.
My inclination is to say angels, but I'm gonna figure that out. I'm figuring out the but.
I can work with whatever, and angels isn't necessarily a positive, you know. I mean, what's the line from? I can't remember which movie it is, but like when
Wait, stop. You cut out as you were like, angels isn't necessarily the is what I heard.
angels isn't necessarily it doesn't mean, well, it kind of makes them a positive, you know. Over and over again about when God wants to punish somebody or scare somebody, they sent an angel, you know. It's looks like an angel is not like, oh, sweetness and light and white robes and no, you know, wheels.
No. I'm thinking of it in terms of like other, fairy or fae stories.
Yeah.
Where, they are so beautiful that it's like heartbreaking, or they're so perfect that it's wrong.
Cool.
That kind of
Yeah.
angel.
Yeah, not the Wheel of Fire with 1,000 eyes, which I think is actually a.
No, I was not going with the Wheel of Fire with 1,000 eyes.
Okay, so you think about this. Under the disguises, they look like choose one, but choose two, and there's some stuff in there for whatever. Again, some of the stuff points at certain kinds of things, and we're kind of aiming at this being supernatural in origin, so I have no worries about matching tone. There's some. It would be very, very easy to make the wolves. I just realized looking at this, it would be really, really easy to use this playbook and the definition of wolves in the Maelstrom to do the Stephen King Dark Tower series. That's meant. I think that's a positive for me, but not what I'm doing today. What did my? Sure. Yeah, lovely. I think that's kind of. We have to go back to Hex afterwards but that's something we do as a group. So. And also kind of figure out your first impression stuff because I'm curious about that. Okay. Hey Kim.
Yeah,
How you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Have you come to any definitive?
Definitive decisions?
Yeah. If not,
Well, I'm dithering a little bit.
It's okay.
Because that's how I roll. I'm very much trying to decide between the Brain Picker and the Unalone.
Okay.
Working off of kind of how much Spider Robinson have y'all read?
I mean, some. I would say some. I kind of got somebody pulled a dirty trick on me in college to get me to read some Spider Robinson and told me like about a scene in the book that I needed to read and at least read that far until I had gotten to that scene to decide whether or not I liked it.
Ah.
The scene didn't exist in the book,
Oh, that's just mean.
and he described it in like really like how awesome it was, and I and had pointed it directly at like one of my jams, so I was reading toward that, and it never happened. He's like, yeah, but how? And I was like, the scene is like, he goes, yeah, but how'd you like the book? I liked it fine, but yeah, I just made that up so you'd read the whole thing.
That's a bait and switch.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I haven't read any Spider Robinson since then.
Okay, so in some of the books there is a Lady Sally character,
Okay,
which may or may not mean anything to y'all.
a lady what?
Lady Sally.
Yeah, no, doesn't ring any bells, but keep
Okay.
going.
All right, so never mind. So I'm trying to fill in the blanks in there. I'm still leaning pretty heavily towards the brain picker.
Okay, what about the unalone
Yeah.
gives you pause and going, oh yeah, but then I don't get.
It
Right?
seems like a bit to manage.
Sure. Let me put that another way. What makes you reluctant to give it up
Oh,
immediately? What's the draw there that makes you go, I like
because
brain picker, but man, the unalone gets.
because the unalone has like all of these great opportunities because it's a little hard to manage. It's a double-edged sword there.
I would, yeah, because of all the potential blood there. I mean,
Yeah.
to be fair, a lot of that's sort of my bricks to carry. A little bit, not exactly. I mean, you're gonna have to deal with the drama and the questions and the asks and all of that kind of stuff. And I'll say also, it's not. So I'm still sorting through the tags. Like the little thing that they have in parentheses after each of those things is like, what does that mean? In some cases, like what does devotion mean, and what do those words right after it mean, and what are the demands, and those are the kind of stuff. They're somewhat straightforward, but it's a little tricky. Um, I like it just because it gives us more ties to the community, and I want to hear about that. The Brain Pickers, one of those characters that unless you have a thing you want, and it sounds like we do though. I mean, we've got that the whole the changeling concept.
Hmm.
There's definitely some stuff about like I need to make this work because I can't go to the other thing. So there's some stuff pointed at like caring question mark, because is it really about caring for the community, or is it really about, damn it, you people need to make this work because otherwise I've got to go back hat in hand and possibly head in hand um, to the Fae who think I'm less than dirt and garbage and all that kind of stuff. Half bloods, weak bloods, water bloods.
Or yeah.
Yeah, something
So
bad.
yeah. So like I said, I'm dithering between the two. I mean, they're both quite attractive for different
I mean,
reasons.
that's a good thing, I guess. So
Yeah.
I, boy, I don't know. I honestly, I mean, I see why the blood thing can be really attractive. I think between certainly the brainstorming that you and Kate had both kind of jammed on with the brain picker, that sounds like a lot of fun too.
Yeah. Let's just go with that.
Okay.
You don't have to. I mean, don't.
Oh, no,
don't let him push it.
Because when I was reading through this, around 6:30, 7 o'clock this evening, I was like, "Ooh, that sounds interesting."
Yeah.
So
And
let's go with the gut reaction.
go with it. I love it. And one of the advances in the reason that there's improvement, if you look at the improvement box, the reason there's stuff that's below the line is you don't get to pick the stuff below the line until you've taken 5 other improvements. So there's other stuff like unlock a game changer, create an additional character to play. is just one of the advances. Retire your character to safety, because you can literally only do that with an advancement on your character. You can't just like be safe. You need to level them out. Okay, so the brain picker stuff that we need to worry about. Um, create your brain picker, names and pronouns, pretty straightforward. Your first impression. Everybody's first impression words are a little bit different. Oh my God, I just saw staring and immediately thought of Maureen Johnson.
Well, it is very useful.
I mean, staring.
Hold on,
Uh,
I have to send. I'm putting in chat a thing that she sent me recently. That's
it,
like a college picture of her, where the dead-eyed stare is equally present.
in the Roll20 chat or the Discord chat?
I don't know which one is easier to put up.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't effectively matter. I don't need Maureen's picture in the recording. That's not cool. So we can go in Discord.
I'll put it in Discord. Give me a minute. Keep talking.
Yeah, no problem. Okay. So back over to where we were looking.
So, stats, it's pretty simple. The only concern I really have is because all the gear is very tech.
Yeah.
So we'll have to discuss.
We'll definitely, yeah, I will, certainly any input, super welcome, but I'll go through that gear and coming up with sort of a reskin. And if you have ideas for because it's pretty clear about what it's meant to do.
Right.
So if you come up with a better name for it, rock on. I'm 100%
Okay.
there. So if you got a thing like, oh, this is whatever.
Yeah, and this weekend I'll have time, unfortunately, at the day job. There's not a lot of downtime.
Right. No, absolutely. Completely understand. Yeah. Pain wave projector. Yeah. One harm, armor piercing, area, and high tech instead would be, magic or weird or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Loud, reset. But, what it is could, call it whatever you want to call it. I don't care. So that's, pick a couple brain picker gear, get a small fancy weapon. Oh, that's the one with the scalpels. I'm using scalpels inappropriately. Look at me. Yay.
I don't think I'll be doing that.
It's, the thing is, it's, I talked about how the harm tends to cap out at 3. You'll note that that's the most damaging thing on the list. Those things are, but the range is a range I rarely see because it's not hand to hand range like the hidden knives, the ornate.
It's intimate.
It's intimate. You need to be right up in there. Yep, there's that Maureen Johnson stare. Oh, I like that perm. That's some hair she's got going on there.
I'm pretty sure it was for a show, but I don't remember what show it would have been.
See, I was thinking of that one where she had the tiger ears on and the orange t-shirt thing that I've seen.
Well, I have that. I mean, that's a good stare too, but this is a.
I think
this
it's
going back.
It's worth noting that it's been the same stare for a tick over 20 years, so she's got that going on.
There's consistency involved.
They've made T-shirts with that stare on there, and they say stare. Actually, the picture of the T-shirt's pretty good too. But so yeah, really any of those in there, we're definitely gonna reskin them to kind of make sense.
Yeah.
Which is totally good. And I'm gonna need to over the course of the next couple weeks. Obviously, I'm gonna be asking a bunch more questions about that. It asks you to take some. Where's the thing at? You get all the basic moves. Take 2 brain picker moves.
Yep.
There's occasionally stuff in here that is terminal, and you can kind of, if you go to the very end of the this PDF, there's some stuff in there that kind of explains what does environ mean, what does psi mean. If weird is your connection to weirdness, psi is kind of like the strength of your mental handgun.
Yeah.
How that kind of stuff. Environ is literally environmental damage, which in a weird way almost kind of it's not this bad, but it kind of okay. Did any of you guys ever get subjected to the role-playing game Rifts?
Oh God, yes.
Okay, so environ damage is kind of like that scaled up damage that's meant to damage buildings and cars, and you really don't want it pointed at people. So there's actually a move on here that like lets you damage buildings with your scary brain power.
Yep,
You really, really wouldn't want that pointed.
at people.
Well, it says in there, can't be brought to bear on a specific target. That's not really a comfort, since it's really, that just means you're like indiscriminately blasting the countryside with your.
Yeah. Well, considering that the harm that it does is called harm messy,
Yeah,
I think that sums it up.
yeah, it really, really does. So yeah, this is a scary character, but a lot of fun. And one of those things that's like that. Honestly, that I'm already so barfing forth apocalyptica kind of thing. Why don't the Fae like you? Well, okay, you've been with the humans too long. To a certain extent, you're almost kind of part human. There's probably been generations where you like bred with humans. You got human blood, the thing. But the other thing that's just super goddamn annoying is you're not pure and you're still freaking really super powerful and scary.
Exactly. It's like,
So so
you're
you're
better than the worst of us.
yeah, you're unclean. We don't like you, and you can probably accidentally kill us.
Yeah.
And we couldn't do fuck all about it, and that makes it even worse, right?
Yeah,
So
that just sums up annihilation.
right. Hey Kate,
Yeah.
are you sneaking out of the? Did I pick up this vibe that you're sneaking out of the settlement occasionally and making contact with certain members of the Fae? Is
If
that
you
is
picked
that
up that vibe, it was entirely in your own imagination, but I'm happy to play with it.
really? Because you were actually talking.
Yup.
Really? I imagine that? Because you were talking about
Yup.
like, you know, knowing their secrets and knowing how they work, and I need my charm to be high, and I thought maybe there was some.
No, you're imagining it. You're conflating Aragorn, which is relevant, obviously. But I mean, I can do that. We
I
can
know
make it work.
I'm
I
not
don't know what the situation is yet.
I'm
So
not
I'm not willing to say I'm sneaking out. I may be that person based on what you had been saying earlier who needs to travel from settlement to settlement.
sure. Yeah, that I got. Like you're definitely, not just a homebody for sure. I'm not even being facetious. I was pursuing a line that I thought I had picked up on where it was like there's a little bit of fraternizing with the enemy kind of a thing, like know your enemy in the biblical sense. And that's where I thought maybe that was pointed. How is it? Okay, so um, and I'll start asking some questions because I'm curious about this stuff. Where now? I'll own the fact that Kate's going to know the layout of Manhattan Island better than any of us.
Yeah, by the way, the picture that's the background is so wrong.
I did, yes, but that's okay.
So
Yeah, I know
wrong.
it's all the right buildings in the wrong places. I even know that. Is that the George Washington Bridge that's meant to be the one that's
No,
collapsed?
it's the Brooklyn Bridge, which A is across the East River, and B is more than 30 blocks away from the Empire State Building and would be on the opposite side of it.
This is a movie New York. Hand
It's
waving.
wrong.
She,
This is a photoshopped New York,
there was a
obviously.
there was a
You're
crazy.
just saying this to make me mad. It's wrong.
I'm not. It's meant to be identifiably New York elements. Maybe maybe the Maelstrom rearranged the building arrangement. I got nothing. I got nothing. I knew enough to know there's no way that the Empire State Building is anywhere near a damn body of water. Maybe that's the Lexington. Maybe that's the Lex. It's right in the middle of the. Does Lexington Avenue go
It
anywhere near
would
the?
still be off by like, 2 or 3 giant blocks.
Yeah.
This is clearly a picture of Lower Manhattan. It's like Sesame Street. They combine Sesame Street with the Empire State Building and the Brooklyn Bridge. Just go on. Go beyond this conversation, please. You're just making me angry.
I am going to canonically have Fae that are trying to channel Sesame Street to lure people into some sort of like weird honey trap somewhere in the island.
I appreciate that.
Just because I need it. So with that said, and actually thinking about real New York, where and there's a great little map that I'm not going to pull up right now. Well, maybe I will, but that's like this really terrifying map you can use that like lets you put in a zip code and then say what would happen if the water level rose 10 feet. Um, it can be a little bit scary to kind of look at when you live on the coast. So given that and knowing that, a lot of Jersey Shore right across, or not Jersey Shore, but the shore of Jersey right across the East River is East River? Jersey across the East River?
Hudson.
Hudson. Sorry. Stuff things are hard. A lot of that turns into salt flats if you raise the water level 3 or 4 feet.
Oh, I mean, literally, the meadowlands are swamps.
Yeah,
I mean,
barely reclaimed, if reclaimed. Oh, here's the thing. Yeah, I'll grab this. It's kind of a fun thing to play around with, but I say fun. I'm going to get back over to, if you look at Discord, there's a link in there to this like crazy little map thing. But so talking about, we're on Manhattan. Where are we? What's interesting to people in terms of like, it's been 50 years. What like where's the settlement around? Where did the settlement gravitate? Then please anybody chip in. I mean, we've got somebody who's knowledgeable about the layout of the island, and I've talked a little bit about what buildings are likely to have survived the longest, but that doesn't mean you're not making new buildings out of the scrap or whatever. The medic's got a sanctuary. What kind of building do you envision that in? Or is it in a basement somewhere that for some reason isn't waterlogged? Stuff like that. Thoughts?
I mean, I certainly like the idea of St. Pat's Cathedral being, as the cathedral being, you mentioned, that it's built out of the rock, so it's going to last longer. But it's also, my recollection is that it's attached to another building that has like a cool garden on top of it, and it's right across the street from Rockefeller Center, which I can see that ice skating rink turning into a cool little garden.
Yeah, or at least a really fancy planter box for volunteer trees and things of that nature. The rock itself, the building itself may be sketchy at this point.
Oh, absolutely, but that's what makes it interesting. It's also on top of a subway line, which likely would have collapsed. But that's
right.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, subway lines. There's a lot of flooding stuff that happens pretty quickly in New York because the pumps on a normal day when it's not raining move something like 300,000 gallons of water a day or something insane like that. And when it rains, it's higher. And when the power goes out to the city, it takes about less than 3 days for basically a lot of that stuff to be underwater.
I will also say that in keeping with recent Facebook conversations with friends rewatching The Day After Tomorrow,
oh my God,
the New York Public Library would probably be a great spot too. It's not so tall that the building would collapse. It's right on Bryant Park, so you have that, green space, but surrounded by a lot of other buildings.
I wish there was a way I could save. If you guys look at that website that I shared and punch in 10110 for New York and kind of zoom down to the tightest zoom, you can see Manhattan Island and like the Rockefeller Center and Bryant Park that we're kind of talking about. And if I remember right, like Grand Central Terminal is just basically immediately north of Bryant Park, isn't it?
No, it's that green roofed building that is
kind of like a
2.5 blocks east of Bryant Park.
I see what you're looking at. Hang on here 1 second. I'm gonna screenshot.
Oh, I see it.
Yeah, I'm gonna screenshot some stuff and pull it in where we can look at it a little bit more collectively. Assuming that works. We're gonna file save. So there's a lot of. I mean, I love that area. Bryant Park right there. That gets turned into a community garden, toot sweet. You've got the library right there. I don't remember. I think I was only ever in there the one time. Is it like what's the roof like? Are there a lot of skylights or is it not like that? Not windows, but like holes in the roof.
I don't believe there are holes in the roof because it's an old building. It's about that same time frame as Grand Central.
Right.
And it wouldn't have been safe for the books to put skylights in.
For sure.
Hold on, I'm going to show you something. I'm going to find a picture.
Do that. I love that idea.
Joyce,
Yes, ma'am.
I also want you to look up a place called Clinton Park, which is a little bit, it's kind of near, you know, uh, it's on the, it's right by Hudson Yards, I guess, kind of in Hell's Kitchen, between Hell's Kitchen and Lincoln Square, if you can find it.
Yeah.
Clinton Park.
Give me 1 second. Is it on? Is it showing up on this little zoom in thing? Or?
No, I'm doing my own research and I'm looking for places where horses are ridden on Manhattan.
Okay. And I see it. I mean, so Hell's Kitchen is going to be.
Ooh,
It's on the west
it,
side.
it looks like it's right on the water.
Oh, do what?
Yeah,
Park. Yeah, I see it right there.
Okay,
It's
so on the
Hudson.
south end of Clinton Park is Clinton Park Stables
nice.
LLC,
Okay.
a horse boarding.
Nice.
Um,
It's going to
you know,
be
stable.
even closer to the water. In this, and I'm going to get a couple of. I want to get a couple of screenshots
Right.
up here that we're. While we're
Right, but I was just saying,
yeah.
this may be, a place where animals could have been sourced from.
Yeah,
You know
and
what I
that-
mean?
And yeah, and that's over the course of 50 years. If people are, if the option exists, and you guys have given me a couple of, good examples of that, then certainly, and there's people interested in that sort of thing, then that carries forward.
Oh yeah, there's lots of people. There's actually there's a lot of private boarding stables. There's at least 10 on the south end of Manhattan. So
I'm going to sort, sort by date. Really? Oh, I put it in the wrong place. Did I? Probably, because I do that. Really? All right. Sorry, I lost the image. I was just fiddling around with it. I'm not sure how I managed to
The
do
link
that.
I put up on Discord will take you to a whole bunch of pictures of the New York Public Libraries, specifically the ceilings.
Oh, man, that's specific. I love it. I have detailed pictures of the library. Okay, I got it.
It's a very famous ceiling, the Rose Reading Room.
Sorry, I need to get back into, I don't know how I lost the screenshots. Oh, I forgot to save them because I'm an idiot. All right. Just doing that.
And of course, being completely stone, life is good, except when it's not.
Well, and yeah, there's a couple things though. I mean, stone's not gonna
Protect you for shit.
Yeah, I mean, in certain ways, but you also don't have to worry about certainly a lot of the skyscrapers are built right down through to be jammed in the bedrock, but they're also not meant to, those girders aren't meant to be flooded and underwater.
Right.
So they tend to fold over time, which is, not great. Meanwhile, the library, Grand Central, the cathedral, stuff like that, where you think museum, but the museums tend to have those big fancy skylights and water gets in, skylights, chimneys, things like that. So in terms of longevity, giving you a structure to work with, pretty nice. You don't have you're right, you don't have the protection of the iron, but honestly, the whole island is kind of like, this is sort of this is a miasma of unhealthiness. And obviously, you get your changelings have kind of worked your way around that kind of stuff because of being some kind of weird, creepy unclean mixture. Ugh, mixture. Oh, there it is. Finally. Oh my God, it was taking me forever. All right, so I'm grabbing a couple of maps and just dropping them over in Roll20 just for the sake of doing it. And I will eventually get over back to Discord so I can look at the link that Kate provided. Yay. So lots, yeah, okay, cool. Lots of pretty art, but not pretty holes.
Nope.
I can't
Solid ceilings.
I can't speak to the quality. Now they get a couple, there's a couple places where there's windows on the side, but that's still fine. I can't speak to the quality that the pictures would still be in, but certainly, was it the iron thing that you were talking about, Kim, when you were talking about like being less protection?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, okay, yeah. I mean, and a lot of that you kind of inherit that a little bit by virtue of
where you're at.
Yeah, exactly, and the fact that you're around the in the city. The city's not great for. So there's this whole area kind of, if you look at Roll20 where my little green circular ping is happening here, there's a lot of really, certainly that sounds like our home area here, and to a certain extent, at least historically, ranging out over, we've got horse up, we got a park here. Was this Grand Central where I'm pinging right now, or the terminal?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Green roof building.
So yeah, I remember Bryant Park from a couple months ago. Madison Square Garden would probably be useless. But isn't the library like right there?
No, the library.
Oh, is it up? Oh, it's up over. It's up over.
It's the building on the eastern half of Bryant Park is the library.
Right there. Okay. Oh, that's see, all that stuff's. All right. Sorry, the other east. Oh, that's the building. I'm looking right at it. Yeah, cool. I'm gonna get a good Google Maps here for like, and if you look here, this is one of the maps that I use where I kind of projected some of the water rise sort of stuff. And if I grab the other image that is available, this is sort of a wider shot and kind of speaks to some of the stuff that Kate was talking about with Jersey being a lot of marshes. And if you bring in a little bit more seawater, suddenly they turn into a scene out of Deliverance. If it ever uploads. It's a big picture. Slowly. You can kind of see, I mean, obviously, all the stuff that's under blue is stuff that was ground and is not anymore.
Yeah.
So a lot of that stuff. So the rivers get a lot wider. Hoboken is an island. At least the part labeled. Jersey City is a series of islands. Liberty State Park is probably a lady standing out in the water with the water right up to her feet. And actually, there's a location in a couple of the playbooks that they mentioned as the lighthouse, and I've just mentally in my head have switched that to the lady, and possibly having some sort of weird faction out there for that. And there's some stuff there that might matter for you guys in general and all that kind of stuff. I had questions. Okay, so that we're all good with that kind of location, sort of the south end of Manhattan, down in that general region.
Sure.
Sounds like a lot of cool stuff there. I've got more buildings to look up.
That is Midtown. That is not the south end of Manhattan.
Well, the south end is largely underwater now, so it's become the south end. And a lot of the buildings down on the south end have kind of collapsed, so it's become a lot. That end is particularly waterlogged, so a lot of those down there are. It's looking a lot like an old growth forest with the trees like collapsed and leaning against each other, and a lot more skeletal skyscraper structures. A lot more of that stuff standing in, at least at high tide, the streets filled with water. When you get down the south end. So no, it's not the south end of the island. It's Midtown. Conveniently, over the last 50 years, most people have forgotten all of these names or come up with different ones. So if I don't know them, I can just say it's because it's changed.
Uh-huh.
I love and appreciate you? Question mark?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Uh-huh. That's all I hear. Uh-huh.
Hang on. What did you just say?
That's all I hear is uh-huh from Kate.
My daughter was saying that's not one of the lines you want to use on your wife. I occasionally use that line on Kaylee, and she uses it on me. She's like, "That's not the movie. That's not the line you want to use on your wife." All right. Okay. So, what do we got going on here? We got lots of questions to raise, but it's coming up on 10:30, which is turning into a pumpkin time, I think. Certainly coming up for, because Amanda, you're an hour later, yeah?
Yeah, it's 11:21. Mark gets off at midnight, so I got to leave in the next 20 minutes
We
or
need a
so.
little bit anyway, which is fine. We need a good hard stop to obey, I think.
Yeah.
We have some questions to answer. We have some more communication, some more more things to think about. I think, but I think we have a pretty good start. I'm going to be trying to figure out some stuff. I'm going to be when I'm at, I want to make this, I want to say this before we get done. When I'm asking questions like, "Hey, are you like sneaking out to think?" I'm not making a request. I'm if only I'm making sure I understand something. Clearly, I didn't in that particular. Are you sneaking out to whatever? Or I'm opening a door to point out that hey, there's a door there. Go through it. If you guys are coming back saying this isn't quite, whatever, this isn't quite weird enough for me. We need to weird it up a little bit. You know, nobody goes on the streets because so I'm going to be asking some more questions about the settlement. Where's the, we've kind of talked about Bryan Park, maybe there's gardens, whatever, but like, I love the idea of that whole thing being a garden right out in front of this museum that still gets used, but the world's biggest, fanciest garden shed, but maybe not that. Or maybe that's where where our medic's at. Lay claim. I want to know more about like the folks that are in charge, who you're butting heads with, all that kind of stuff. And I think there's some stuff like that. I do want to just real quick, if you guys have we kind of gotten through most of our sheets, sort of.
Most of it.
Yeah.
Mostly.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So real quick, there's a thing. Get this thing up here. I'm gonna start with the brain picker because it's at the front of the sheet and that's where I am. On the second side there, it has the hex, the HX stuff there.
Yep.
Everyone introduces their characters by names, pronouns, look, and outlook. Take your turn. So why don't you? We're just gonna go around the horn real quick. So have you got a name yet?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Her name is Guthrie.
Guthrie. Okay. And we have pronoun right there. Bang.
Yep. She.
Look. Do we have?
I'll have to come up with some things on that
Okay.
one.
Yeah. And look, in sometimes with these playbooks or in some games, the look is kind of like you pick stuff. In this case, it doesn't really look at. What about the first impressions?
First impressions, going off of the choose one or more and add your own. For her, and I'll add the question mark onto at least one of them.
Mm-hmm.
It will be inquisitive,
Okay.
strange,
Cool.
and courteous question mark.
Courteous question mark. Oh, I love that. I am intrigued and immediately want to receive your newsletter. Yes, that's great. Okay, so we're going to stop there for just a second and loop down to the medic. So,
Okay.
got a name?
Kaiwei. Kaiwei.
How are you pronouncing again? Kaiwei?
Kaiwei.
Kaiwei. All right, Kaiwei. Great. I'm just singing it in my head. Pronouns?
So I picked dogged.
Oh, sorry. Backing up. Pronouns. I want to make sure I get them right.
I'm sorry. She, hers, her.
She,
My
hers, her.
apologies.
Gotcha. All right. And so jumping down,
sorry,
first impressions.
Their pronouns.
It's okay.
Yeah. Dogged, caring, distractible, and intense.
Where's the
Question mark?
On which one? On intense?
On intense.
Interesting. We're going to talk more about that.
Uh-huh.
Unless you want to talk about it now. But yeah, I want to know why that's maybe not true. Well, it's true, except when it isn't.
It is.
So give me the impressions again.
So
The first
caring,
caring,
dogged,
dogged,
distractible,
distractible.
intense
That is an interesting contrast between dogged and distractible.
combination.
Yeah, that's a fun combination. I almost think I need to think of somebody I know in real life who's like that. Probably do. Hell, it could be me. Oh, it's probably me. God, that's depressing. All right. Okay. Cool. Kate, do you have a name?
Yes, Saren.
Say it one more time.
Saren.
Saren.
Serran. Pronouns she, her.
She, her. Gotcha.
First impressions, calm, thoughtful question mark, well armed.
Well armed. Is that one of the first impression words?
It says I get to add my own.
Nice. So the first impression. See, and that's interesting to me because you like have the bow, but you give the impression of being like, I like it. I like that. I like it a lot. It also tells me that you may be acquiring more weapons as you go.
Well, my bolt hole also has a sawed-off shotgun in it.
Nice.
I assume I don't get to carry that around.
Well,
but
I mean, if you're like, I'm going to go back to the bowl hole and grab my shotgun. Okay, you go back to the bowl hole and grab your shotgun. But it's also nice to have it as a surprise move, kind of thing. Also, if you take it, then your bolt hole doesn't have any defense immediately at hand. But there's consequences. But it's not like it's listed under your sanctuary. You can't leave with. No, that's not. No. You want it? Go get it. You want to go and talk to somebody and say, dude, I need some stuff. Oh, I'm going to quickly. So one more thing we're going to ask real quick, and then I want to look at the HX, and then we're going to be done. On the front of your character sheet, there's a little section called scavenge where you basically just choose one or the other, and it's a lot of how you interact with the settlement. So our brain picker, remind me of your name again.
Guthrie.
Guthrie. You're known and feared by some, but you won't use your psychic abilities just to exploit or extort people. You have 2 barter. Or when your resources run thin, you're more than willing to use your psychic abilities to exploit and extort people. You have 3 barter.
Probably I'm going to go with the first.
The first one? Feared by some,
Yep.
but not a complete fucker. Good.
Not yet.
Medic. People support you out of appreciation, and you turn all their support back into resources for providing more care. You have 0 barter. Or people support you out of appreciation, and you're able to live a little comfortably on their gratitude for your care. You have 2 barter.
The latter.
The latter? Cool.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have to. I'm going to loop back when we have more time on the sanctuary stuff. Don't worry about it right now. Barter is basically generic. Gestalt wealth. Money is meaningless. Barter is everything. Vigilant.
Right.
You don't make yourself stand out, preferring to live unobtrusively with people around you and go unnoticed by outsiders. You have 1 barter. Or you provide valuable services, warnings, and insights to people around you and live a commensurate lifestyle. You have 2 barter.
Yeah, I have a lifestyle.
You have a commensurate lifestyle.
Number
All right.
2.
Yeah, I'm risking my life out there. People, damn it. Give me my couches, my cushions. All right. Probably not done. Okay, so everyone introduce their characters by name, pronouns, look, outlook, take your turn. We'll start with the brain picker. So you have, brain picker, you have a couple of questions to ask. You can ask one, you can ask both. It's entirely up to you.
Right. Let's see. Oh, I'll have to go with the first one. Are any of you actually honestly uncomfortable hanging out with me?
No.
So Kate said no. Was it both
No.
no's?
It's
Not?
both no's.
Okay.
Okay.
So that doesn't, excuse me, it doesn't, so you can either ask
That's
the other
interesting.
one. Yeah, it is interesting because I'm personally terrified by you, but carry on. Do you want to ask
There's
the
a
other
very
one?
nice facade going on, apparently.
Yeah.
And do any of you seem dangerous or unpredictable to me?
No.
Yes.
That's as I would have expected it.
Okay, so for Saren, we're going to get these names written down.
Dangerous and unpredictable.
So for Saren, we're going to record that you've got hex 2 with
Okay.
Saren. And for everyone else, or if no one volunteers at all, write hex 1. So you have hex 1 with
And I'm assuming, Joyce, that you are recording all of this and will be putting it into a document of some sort.
I am literally recording it. And some of the stuff I
Excellent.
don't know, like I don't know your stats or anything like that. So like what stats you picked and stuff like that. But I am literally recording it and we'll loop back around. So we'll just kind of have this stuff. And when I get to the point where I have built the character sheets properly, I'll get the stuff in there.
Excellent.
In electronic and thus completely permanent fashion. No, but whatever. All right.
And then we can deal with the weird insights.
Yes, which is all stuff that we need to fiddle around with.
Yeah.
There'll be more to come. Not medic moves. I don't need medic moves. Hex for the medic. You have potentially 3 questions you want to ask. You can ask 1, you can ask 2, you can ask all 3.
I am going to
Amanda,
ask
can you say your character's name again? Sorry.
Highway.
So Keiwei.
Kaiwei. Kaiwei.
All right.
Rhymes with highway.
Rhymes with highway spelled completely differently.
Well, says like Brewski, but it ain't.
Okay. So what questions are we going with?
Okay, so I'm going to ask all 3.
All right. Start with
All
the
right.
first one.
Do I figure that any of you are doomed to self-destruction?
Yes.
Yeah, that's how I was going to answer it. Yes. ... question mark.
Yeah.
Um,
As I predicted. Okay.
Okay.
Ha-
Yeah, it's interesting.
So both of them answered yes.
I'll have to figure out what
Tentatively, yes. Tentatively, yes.
We'll see which ones. We may see like which ones are most true because some of these sort of conflict with each other. But go ahead with the next one.
Have either of you ever put in a hand when it mattered and helped me save lives?
Yes.
That sounds.
Yes, but you don't know it. Yes, but you didn't know it.
Okay. Well, then we'll leave that as a because again, if she doesn't know it, this is history as she perceives it. So we'll probably leave
Right.
it alone.
So no.
All right. So put a no there. Yes from Saren.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
What last one? What do you got?
And have any of you been beside me all along and seen everything I've seen?
No.
Was that 2 no's?
There's 2 no's.
Okay. So that's interesting because that kind of puts you as like someone who's been a part of this settlement the whole, like from the get-go, from your, at least, like
From my perspective or
like
whatever.
you've been here forever and they're not, they have not been here forever. That's interesting and actually kind of tracks. So that's cool. Okay. Can we loop back around to the self-destruction thing? Are we? Do we have a more definitive no, yes on that, or what do we think? Does she figure that?
You want me to reread the question?
I'm reading the question.
Oh. Okay. And to a certain extent, you're getting to kind of dictate what kind of impression you've given the medic over time.
And I'll change mine to a no.
Okay.
Oh, then I'll definitely change mine to a yes.
Okay. All right. So you have hex -2 with Guthrie and and hex +2 with Saren. Long pauses are basically because I am absolutely shite with names and always will be for my entire life.
Okay.
So that's good. It gives us a start.
Makes
there.
sense. Okay. So.
And the everyone else thing doesn't come up, so you don't need to worry about.
I'm gonna need to ask you some other questions. I'll email you those questions about the environment.
Yes.
and what it's like.
I'll
But
let-
that's neither here nor there.
And I may turn around and say, I don't know. What do you think? Or I'll throw it out to the.
I mean, like, what are vehicles like? Could I be a stable that like rents out horses? Is that why I'm like perceive myself to be the center of
Well,
whatever?
you can heal people, so that's kind of a big thing. Keeping people healthy and bones knitted and things like
Right.
that.
So hedge witch, veterinarian, and doctor wrapped into one.
Love it. Love it. Renting, renting's tough when there's no money, but the person who has horses and was willing to loan them out under certain-
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's why I was thinking of the scavenge being the latter choice.
Yeah, because you've got
I have 2 barter.
you have things people
That would
want.
be my
Yeah, you got the pretty horses.
and they could be loaned out for tasks that I deem appropriate.
I just I want recognition for not making the Dr. Quinn medicine woman jokes. I'm not doing that. I'm very so proud of myself.
You can do it. I don't give a crap.
And we're left with the Vigilant Hex.
So my question to both of you, are you a wolf of the maelstrom?
No.
Do I have to answer that?
Well,
That is enough of an answer for me. Thank you very much.
well, no, because you have a step to take there. Oh, actually, no, I take that back.
I do not.
If they say yes, tell them what they look like under their disguise, right? Blah. If they say no, right?
But nobody said yes.
If they say anything
got it.
else, oh, I like that. If they say anything else that they don't know, that they used to be, that they'd rather not say anything, right? Hex +2.
There you go. There's your
Done
answer.
it.
Love it. Long pause. Do I have to answer? Well, thank you very much. Thank you all for playing. Moving along. I like that
Moving forward.
I like that you only have like one question, but it has facets. That's fun. Very, very cool. All right. We have stuff sorted. I have so many questions for everybody, but it's time for bed, right? Or time to go
Indeed.
run, or time,
Better go
time-
pick up the boy.
or yeah, gotta go pick up the mark. And I was like, guys,
Yeah.
thanks so much.
Those- The migraines prevent him from driving this late at night because of the lights in
Lights
his
and
face.
stuff.
So
Yeah, no fun
Yeah.
there. All right,
Nope.
guys, thanks so much. This is awesome. I am excited. We will not be able to play next Friday because I think Kate is wandering afield, much like her character, but hopefully with less shooting of people with a bow in the face.
I'm going next Friday night is the California Dreaming cocktail party. So
Yeah.
that sounds
figure out what
exciting.
that
Can I
means
come,
in terms
please?
of-
No,
Sure.
I will-
I don't know what it means in terms of attire, so my packing is going not at all. My packing is not going.
Yeah.
I will warn everybody that the next week then is the Friday after Valentine's Day, if that matters to anyone.
Yeah, we're not around for that either, Joyce.
I
Oh.
figured you two wouldn't be.
Well, yeah.
And also the 15th is Mark's birthday,
All right.
but he still has to work.
We shall struggle mightily, but we will get to, and then we'll make up for it somewhat in building up stuff. So we'll have a nice, clear mental picture of all the stuff that we're going to do, so we can jump right into the action. I usually spend a little bit of time. I'm not going to have like some, oh, now there's a quest. But we're going to spend some time kind of just letting the Steadicam long shot follow you guys around the settlement and see what life is like. I want to establish this status quo so I can drop a Molotov cocktail in the middle of it. So we're going to learn some stuff, talk about some stuff, and we're asked a bunch of questions, and we can play again. We're going to play again. It'll be awesome.
All right, sounds good.
I also know by the time,
Sounds good.
once we get through the first quarter of the year, it's also going to be a little bit less crazy just around here. Certainly schedule-wise, it gets a little bit easier. Anyway, guys, thanks so much. This is awesome. I'm excited. We will make this
Sounds
work
good.
because, by God, I will pull it through by main strength of my own teeth if I have to.
All right. Good night, all.
Good night,
All
guys.
right,
Good
sleep
night.
well.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.